Noe Valladolid is known for his extensive Oswald the Lucky Rabbit collection, featuring items from around the world. Keep watching to get a sneak peek of Noah's collection and hear about which items caught the attention of some of Oswald's biggest collectors and some were maybe within the Disney company. Stay tuned. All right, now, so let's start at the very, very, very beginning because, I have not seen your Oswald collection in person. So I want to know all the things. But first things first, what got you interested in collecting Oswald related stuff to begin with?
I told this Jim the story, and I've told a lot of people this story, but it started when I was a little kid in elementary school. So through most of my life in school, everybody knew me as the cartoon fan, the comic book fan. I'm always drawing in my sketchbook. I'm always drawing in the pages of my homework. So whenever there was cartoon info or anything, everybody would ask me. But in elementary school, we had a little library. And once a week, we would go to the library, check out a book, and take it home to read. And I was always fascinated by the cartoon books, the comic books. And there was a history on animation and characters. So I check it out and I'm going through it. And I get to this little section that says Walt Disney's first character was Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And when you're a little kid and you think Mickey Mouse is what started everything, your mind just goes, oh, what do you, there's a character older than Mickey? What's going on? And they had a little picture. Shelley remembers the name of the book that it must have been because this was in the late 70s, I think. From that point forward, Oswald was always my favorite character because it would be that piece of trivia that all of my friends would say, who's your favorite character? Who's your favorite character? And I would say, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And they'd give me a blank stare. So I'd go, Goofy. Goofy's my favorite character. And they go, oh, yeah, I know that guy. I know that guy. And in junior high school, there was every morning during homeroom, the principal would, on the PA system, ask all of the students, this is your trivia question. Whoever's the first one to answer it, write the answer and drop it off at the front office, gets like $1 to use at lunch to buy popcorn or something. And there were always pop culture questions, sports, music, and I didn't care too much of them. But he says, today's question is about cartoons. And everybody in homeroom turned and looked at me, and I just gave him the thumbs up. I got this, I got this. And he says, who was Walt Disney's first cartoon character? And everybody in homeroom says, oh, that's easy. That's Mickey Mouse. And they turn and they look at me, and I go, what? And they said, who is it? I'm not telling you. I ran, as soon as the bell rang, I ran right to the office, and the secretary is there. And I'm like, has anybody answered the question? And she's like, what are you talking about? Because people are allowed to go to the library and look up the answer and then come back and write it down. He said, are you sure you don't want to look? I know what the answer is. So I write it down, put it in the card. Somebody in third period also had answered the question, much later. And so the next day, he says, there were two correct answers. One came in right away, and he says my name, and the other was like a third period. And he goes, okay, today's question is, and everybody's like, but he didn't say what it was. So they looked at me, who was the first character? And I said, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And all of the students, what? So ever since I was a little kid, I've been obsessed with this rabbit.
Okay, so, but when did obsession lead to a collection? More to the point, what was the very first piece of Oswald related stuff you were able to collect?
That actually started in the early 2000s because he was always my favorite character, but Oswald merch is few and far between because of sort of the Walter Lantz acquisition, Universal, all of that. And his look changed completely because I'm a big fan of the rubber hose style of the classic Pie Eye characters. And a few years after Lance got him, he sort of looked like a traditional cartoonish rabbit. That had no interest. But Universal Osaka had sort of dug through their archives and they found they had the rights to a Walt Disney character. So they introduced him into their parks. And that's this blue tint version that you might see. And it was covered, I think, on Cartoon Brew. They said, this is the merch available over in Osaka, and it's that rare Oswald character. And I was losing my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, they brought back Oswald. They brought back classic Oswald. There was no way I couldn't. Uh, it's much easier to get things overseas now. You get personal shoppers and all of that. Um, I couldn't find anything. And it just bummed me out because they looked like they had a bunch of beautiful things and I couldn't get my hands on it until one day I was just scrolling the web, seeing what was out there, and I found a store that was selling old UFO plush characters from those claw machines. And as I was scrolling through, there was an Oswald from the time at Universal. And I'm like, and it didn't cost a lot. I just wish I had more money. I would have got a bunch of them. But this is the one I got. This is the one that pretty much started it all. And this is early 2000s. And it's Oswald, and he's sort of lying down. And he's a pretty big figure from what you can see. So not only was he like the first character I got, he was the first one,
Yeah.
and it was a claw machine one, and I had this guy forever, and I just kept him next to my computer. And over the years, a character here or there would pop up on eBay or some other sites, and I would get it every time I would see it. So he was the genesis of it all. And
I've never seen a blue Oswald. I mean, Jim, you've seen his collection in person, but did you know about like blue Oswald before Noah?
Well, didn't we? When again, Len and I, again, forgive me, we could go down the rabbit hole here, but didn't we? When we were talking about this initially, you showed this, and again, what fascinated me is that this is an Oswald from a Universal park just before
right,
Disney reacquired the
right.
character. So I mean, the window to acquire these was really small. And but weren't didn't you suggest, Laura, Noah, that maybe one of the reasons that he was blue was because of the whole Disney thing, to the effect of this technically is, the look of Oswald from the Disney era before he was brought to Universal. As Noah mentioned, they changed the look and made him a much more,
Mhm.
a much cuter, almost a generic rabbit in the 30s and the 40s. But weren't we talking along those lines that maybe that was why they went blue rather than black?
Well, like you said, this happened like it almost feels like a few minutes before Disney got the rights back. But I think one of the things that was super important is because this character was just a hit in Japan. And even on the official card here, because Universal and, most Japanese fans that visit the Disney park, Tokyo Disneyland, Tokyo Disney Sea, they're huge, huge Disney fans. So the fact that Universal had a Walt Disney character on the card, it talks about who he is. In the last paragraph, it says, originally created by Walt Disney in 1927, Oswald went on to become a star at Universal Pictures under the artful direction of Walter Lantz, the creator of Woody Woodpecker and other memorable characters. So having that bit of trivia on the tags, the Japanese fans were like, already they reacted to all classic things Disney greatly, but a completely original character who existed before Mickey, I think that might have also got on the radar for the Disney executives that, hey, this character is really hot. He existed before Mickey. Let's try to get him back.
There we go. And we tell the Al Michaels story earlier in today's broadcast, but just to jump ahead here. Now you mentioned, again, Oswald makes his debut in 1927. So what do you have in your? I mean, from the early days of this character. I guess the place to start. What's the oldest piece in your collection?
The oldest piece, I don't have a date on a little match card that I have, but it's probably the crib toy. So that's
Wow.
circa, I want to say 33, I think. And it says Oswald, Universal. So I'm this, of course, having a rabbit that existed from the time of Walt Disney. I have two of them. This box, I spoke with another collector, And he says, I've never seen a box. In all his years collecting, he's never seen one that still has the box. I said, well, this is the one I got. I don't know if it was the original box, but it looks pretty original to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you know of any other like merch from Walt's time with Oswald?
There was a sort of stencil set, and that rarely pops up, but there was one from Walt's time. There might have been a reading book. It's very few merch from Walt's time, but it's the stencil set, the crib toy, just a couple of things. So they're
Now,
very rare.
just to take a step back here to you were just telling about the toy from the 30s and the box that it's in. Forgive me for outing the collector who you were talking with about, that this, but the guy who was interested in what Noah had was Warren Spector, the gentleman who did the Epic Mickey game, which, by the way, remember, is built all around Oswald.
Right.
So I mean, if there's a bigger Oswald fan on the planet, it is Warren Spector, and I love the fact that even Warren recognized that the amazing Oswald collection that Noah has. So
it was at the 2010 E3. I know that he's going to do a presentation, so I take my big Oswald figure with me. I have a tripod, a camcorder on front row center when he's doing the presentation, and Oswald's at the end of under the tripod, under the camera, and he's just staring. And Warren's doing his presentation, and his eyes keep looking down and staring at the figure that I have, and he's presenting it, and he just keeps glancing over. And I got a picture of him sort of glancing over. After the presentation, I'm taking pictures because part of his personal collection is on display at the E3. And so the next day I have a picture of my crib toy with his crib toy. He asked me about the plush, and he's there with Becky Klein from the archives. And he's like, can we see that? And I show them to her, and they're looking at the tags, and they're like, that's it. That's an actual Oswald figure. And he says, where did you get it? I said, I got it for a song not too long ago. And he says, can I offer you a musical? And I said, no, this is my first one, and I'm gonna keep this one forever. And it's like, fair enough.
So is the crib toy your most valuable?
Probably,
because it's from
yes, probably.
Walt's time.
I what I paid for it wasn't a lot because it was way long ago. I might have purchased that before the Blue Oswald, like an official Oswald, and it wasn't a lot because nobody was collecting Oswald merch. I've bought things that were cost more, but as far as value goes, it's the crib toy.
Now, just to go back to E3 in 2010 again. Now, what was great about that wasn't that when they announced or debuted, that Epic Mickey was coming over the horizon? Because Lauren, you'll love this. What they did at that event to sort of stick the flag in the ground to make people aware that this was coming is that, I mean, everybody knows the Mickey ears. Everybody knows the Mickey ears. What was amazing about E3 that year is you could get a set of autographed, just like at the park, Oswald ears. And Noah, you went like 3 or 4 days to that year's E3,
right?
And you braved the line, a 2 and 3 hour line, a couple of times I think you got a set for me. I know you got a set for Shelley. I don't know if you got a set for Alice, but you obviously got one for yourself. But yeah, I mean, but that was the big get, Lauren, coming out of that E3. It's like Oswald ears. Look at these amazing Oswald ears.
Yeah.
So,
do you think it's weird they still had blue? That they still kept the universal blue? Like the tag?
I think they went with blue because those were the sort of colors that they were using for Epic Mickey. But a couple of years later, when they updated DCA for Buena Vista Street and they started offering the Oswald ears, then they did the red circle.
That is so cool. That is so cool. So, all right. So, all right. And now, speaking of which, we jumped ahead in our story a little bit to 2010, but Um, what about I mean, face it, you're collecting in the early 2000s, and then suddenly the news comes down in February of 2006 that Oswald is effectively coming home to Disney. That they made the Al Michaels trade, and now this character is back at the Walt Disney Company. I mean, did that change collecting for you, or?
I knew from that moment on, it was pretty much over for me. Because if you were an animation fan and you knew the characters and you knew that a character was coming back to Disney, you're thinking, oh, yeah, as soon as they start releasing merchandise of this character, it's going to build an entirely new generation of fans, which is good. But all of the classic stuff that I used to be able to search or keep an eye on, that's going to start disappearing. So that's when I really started sort of investing the majority of my collection on that during that era. And then once I was happy with it, I just slowed down because there's so many interests that I have, and I know I've missed a number of drops, but I'm comfortable with I'm happy with what I have. And specifically, I like to collect the plush figures, the three-dimensional figures, um, because it's more tangible than a button or a pen or a shirt. I do have some of that stuff, but the plushes mean something to me. There's dimension to them.
Did you end up getting anything with the Disney 100 line though? Because I mean, like they had a huge Oswald line, and I had never seen such, a variety of items before.
The I did get some pens. I'm looking for something now. I have this would drive people crazy, but one of the drawers that I have is like pens and buttons and badges. I did get some of the 100 items.
But again, starting in 2006, we started to see Oswald again. Obviously, we saw Oswald merch. We saw expansion there, but we saw Oswald come into the park as a walk around character. And not only that, but didn't they also bring in Hortensia, his girlfriend?
A little bit later, they did. Oswald was there for a bit. I think he made his debut in the Paris park, and then Japan and the U.S. about the same time. Uh, we were there on a press event when they did the first showing of Buena Vista Street. I took my mom, Shelly, Alice, and I think I was the first person to buy the Oswald mini statue that they had, mid statue that they had. And because everybody wasn't buying anything, they thought it was like preview only. And I asked one of the employees, "Can we buy stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can buy stuff." And I take one of the boxes right off the shelf, and he's like, "Oh, you're the first person to buy one of these." And I said, "Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah, nobody has bought anything. We got there 5 minutes after they had let everybody in." So I got and I'm walking around the entire day with a statue of Oswald saying, "I'm the first person to get an Oswald thing at DCA." Nobody knows.
Wow.
I can't prove it.
That's cool. Okay.
So is that one of your favorite items because you were the first to buy it, or did you have something else that's near and dear to your heart?
It's kind of hard to say, and I'm I wish I had dug out this one thing. I didn't even think of digging it out. It's hard to pick one favorite, but one of the things I'm super happy with, the thing I was looking for is one of the buttons that the Disney gave their employees when they got their rights back. There's a button of Oswald, and he's got his thumbs on his shoulders, and it says "Welcome back." And they gave that to the employees. I managed to get one of those buttons. But if there was something that took me a while to track down, it was these watches. And they're in the style of the classic Ingersoll Mickey Mouse watch.
Oh.
Ah.
Wow.
With the hands.
That is so cool.
Do you know when those came out?
Yeah, they were by High Rob. I want to say this was shortly after Disney got the rights back. So the first merch of Oswald actually happened in the Tokyo parks and in Japan, at least a year before they started appearing here. So this is probably at the tail end of 2006. And this was like one of the first collaborations. So
Interesting.
I think,
Now, speaking of which, though, I mean, how, face it, we have seen over now, coming up on, 18 years, Disney bringing, making use of Oswald in interesting ways. In fact, I think Lauren and I earlier in today's show were talking about how much we enjoyed his cameo appearance in the Once Upon a Studio short that they just did for Disney 100. Do you have a particular favorite? The way that the company has sort of tried to bring Oswald back?
it's kind of weird. I think they're sort of stuck in not knowing what to do with the character. I like that they took the initiative and they knew that video games were big, and if you want to connect to a generation, you have to introduce them in a video game. I wish Warren Spector had a little bit more creative control, and not anybody that does creative projects, whether you're a director or producer, they always say the only thing that stifles creativity is when people that don't understand the characters start trying to help the project through committee, and that just doesn't work. So Epic Mickey really could have been something.
No, absolutely. In fact, I don't know. Did you see just recently? In fact, I think it was Alice who actually pointed me at this art that James Silvani and Amy Meberson, that the idea was, Lauren, that Disney should do a sequel to Epic Mickey, and so they were working on, what was it, Epic Donald, and
Like
the
that.
notion, what, yeah, they were leaning into classic Donald Duck, so that there would have been something in that deep, crazy style that Epic Mickey had, and I was lucky enough to get to talk with Warren a couple of times, over the history of Epic Mickey and then Epic Mickey 2, and you felt for him, because this was a guy who loved the character, who loved gaming, and and as Noah just kind of alluded to there, it was Disney, and the executive at Disney that really kind of tripped up that project, that it could have been so great. Guys in corner offices have to put their hands in and touch things, and sometimes projects never recover from, let me help. It's like,
Yeah.
no, leave it alone, let it be good.
And so we got an Oswald short on Disney Plus. Like, has there been anything else that Oswald that you know of has been integrated in outside of the merch?
Well, yeah, the big gas station at DCA. But I think the him some cameos in video games. But I think the biggest things these appeared in are sort of cameo bits, and I have to credit that to Tara Billinger, who's an art director, toy designer, Oswald super fan, and there's an interview with her in D23. But when she started there at animation, her desk was next to Paul Rudish, who's the director on the Mickey shorts.
Oh,
So they would talk
yep.
classic characters. They would talk all of these things that they loved. And I'm pretty sure she's the reason that Oswald snuck in a couple of shots in the Mickey shows, and they were great to begin with. But I think one of them was a billboard with Oswald on it. Mickey's trying to dig something out of a trash pile, and every time he scoops something out, it's a different character. And Oswald was in one of them, and he was like, "No, that's not what I'm looking for." So those are the other sort of cameos that he's had. That
Well, tell me about the gas station. I don't know what you're talking
about. So DCA, Disney California Adventure.
Yeah.
They had a main street that the original sort of theming of the park was all of the California landmarks in one park. The boardwalk, the Golden Gate Bridge, Yosemite, all of these places. And that sort of didn't work with guests because they wanted Disney characters in this park. And because of that, they say that was one of the reasons why it was like a half-day park. So they rethemed this main street that used to be sort of like a San Francisco area to the era that Walt Disney and his brother, when their studio got started in the 20s. So the architectures of that style, Art Deco. And as soon as you get in through the front gates, there's an Oswald gas station to your left. and it's Oswald's, and the pumps are there, and a car from the 30s, and aha. So there's Oswald's. So this outfit was for Duffy, and my brother said, "Hey, you realize that those Duffy outfits will fit on an Oswald, right?" So I took it off Duffy and I stitched it to Oswald, and yeah, he works much better. So Oswald.
How cool is that? Is that gas station still there?
Yes, it's
Yeah,
still there.
I mean, it's just well, and in fact, that's what's lovely about the Buena Vista Street area on, in the entrance, the retail corridor for California Adventure, because so many of the shops there acknowledge the Disney characters of the 20s and 30s. Isn't what is it? Isn't the cafe there
Clarabelle
the fight?
Cow. Uh,
There we go.
the three pigs are
And
there. Even the billboards
there we
are
go.
for all the classic
Yeah,
characters.
yeah. No, no, no.
The cats on the paintings, the signs that they paint on the glass. So all call outs to the classic characters.
Yeah, no, no, no. Again, if you're really paying attention in that area, Lauren, they have leaned hard into the early Disney stuff, and again, that was half the charm, just to walk in the door and it's like, oh my God, the Oswald gas station. And didn't Oswald used to do meet and greets there, the walk around, but then they moved him down the block a bit, right?
He was there. I don't know if they moved him. I haven't been in a while. Like the first day he debuted, I was in I was like the second group that got in, and next to me it was Tara Billinger. And I look over to her and I'm like, you're Tara Billinger. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I'm this collector. Oh yeah, I've seen your stuff. And so we got a picture of us together. And so we were just talking Oswald, and she of course had her blue and white striped shirt from Tokyo Disney Sea with Oswald on that, and she had her hat and everything. So I'm grateful for people like that work in the company that are trying to get the studio to do something with them.
Yeah, and it's just that every so often, I mean, but for me, it's like what makes me a little crazy is Oswald is like paprika. I mean, you'll see him thrown in. I mean, like for example, that moment in what was it? The short from
Get a
2013,
horse.
Get a Horse, where for what, a tenth of a second at the end of the short, Oswald leans out of the screen for a moment, like, hey, what's going on?
My family was like, "Did you see him? Did you see him?" I'm like, "I saw him."
There we go. There we go. All right. Now to get back to collecting Oswald, though, I mean, obviously, it sounds like you got in early, got again, and you can see just a few little bits of the stuff that Noah has right behind him there. But um, is there still something you're looking for even today that you'd like to add to your collection?
Um, there's a couple of plush figures. I'm still looking for those classic Universal Oswald characters. There's just a handful of them to get. Otherwise, I have a complete collection. But those are the majority. Um, the bigger the plush figure, the better. I love getting the big ones. This one was like the first big plush that Disney released shortly after they got the rights.
I love the ears are sticking out of the top.
Yeah.
Uh,
So there's a whole story to this one. So this is the first plush that they released. They released a statue similar to this one, where Oswald's holding a paintbrush and a Christmas ornament where he has a top hat. The design for that gray version of Oswald came from Kevin and Jody. They designed a big fig statue, and when they had an auction not too long ago for their original, I tried to win that one. I don't know how many thousands it went for. I asked my wife, is it possible we just max out our credit card for this? And she says, yeah, given that it's going to your collection, that would make sense. I got outbid for the big fig statue, but the plush, they made an original velvet, and you're gonna love this one. Excuse me, Oswald. Here we go. So they made one to take to product, and this is, they
oh,
made two of them.
holy
The one that they
cow.
sold at the auction has a little green tag under his foot, or a yellow tag that they signed. My bid was exactly the same amount as the bid for that figure, but I lost because my bid came in second, like a half second after it closed the auction. And so they told Kevin and Jody about it, and they say, well, we actually have two of them. The second one doesn't have the tag, but you can tell it's our figure. Would you like to buy it? And I said, absolutely. Um, you
I
can see he
love
has
the
his whiskers.
pose. Yeah,
This is the exact pose that he had on that button I was talking about, the welcome back.
no, that's I mean that
That's
is
so
so
cool.
on model for the early days of that character. Holy cow! So, oh, that's
Wow.
great.
And if you're listening to this as a podcast, again, you'll want to head over to Jim Hill Media on YouTube to see that Oswald and all of Noah's other collector's items here. I mean, they're pretty special.